thank you so much for the kind introduction. And Grant, I want to share with, and I want to follow what you were saying, that it's somewhat emotional to be here on stage again. And I want to thank you for inviting DELL Technologies. It's quite an honor to be here and to share how DELL Technologies and INnoDep are building our global partnership, as we have been doing since 2014 when we were meeting for the first time. Indeed, an honor to talk about innovation. And it's innovation that DELL Technologies and INnoDep are driving together. It's what binding the two companies together. It's what our shared vision is. Let me start with a short video about how the world is growing, what is changing, and then what we are observing in the market. Let's have a look.
1950, New York City's population is just under 12.5 million. It's the planet's largest city and the wonder of the world. By 2050, Mumbai's population is projected to exceed 42 million. 60 cities will have bigger populations than present-day London. 68% of humanity will be urbanites. From power and sanitation to traffic management, from hospitals to police and fire departments, from government to revenue collection, today's city services operate individually and autonomously. With urban populations growing at around 125 million a year, many city governors are struggling to deliver services with limited resources. The idea of smart cities is not new, but the digital capability to achieve genuinely interconnected urban systems was out of reach. Today, the essential elements are all in place. Modern networks with software-defined data centers, hyper-converged intelligent infrastructure, 5G, edge computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, smart sensors. Together, these technologies form a central nervous system that digitally ties disparate city departments, services, and infrastructure into an agile, cohesive, connected mechanism, creating an intelligent system of systems that leverages the true value of data to drive human progress. At DELL Technologies, our pre-validated edge and IoT solutions offer a proven, predictable route to transform your city's services. From edge to distributed core to the multi-cloud, building foundations for the efficient, outcome-driven and connective services that will maintain quality of life in the mega cities of tomorrow.
And maintaining quality of life is something I will be talking more about. But hey, what has happened over the last 3 years? How has our world changed? Look at some of the things here on the screen. The pandemic. Societies are getting more polarized. Technology helping us to reimagine the world. The world is changing fast. And I dare to say that if we think that the world is changing really fast, today is probably the slowest day that you will see of change. Because look at all those Uber trends. I'm not going to discuss all the Uber trends here. But just look at it and think about what is coming ahead of us in full steam. Today is really the slowest day that we are going to see in change. I was looking at some of this and I was thinking about my own son. I mean, he asked me last week, how did you survive without the internet? And I just looked at him and I started to laugh and I was like, you're right, you cannot imagine that a whole generation is growing up. They don't know about the time there was no internet. And if you don't understand what I am saying here, then look at how the technology landscape, the company landscape in the US has changed over the last 100 years, and especially since 1967. The blue dots in this slide represent the companies that can be related to and seen as technology organizations. In 1967, we had 5 organizations in the top 10 in the US, technology related. Now, out of 10 companies in the US, 8 are technology related. What do you think that the other 2 companies here are going to be here in the next 2 years? What other organizations are going to be there? chances are that 10 out of the 10 and perhaps 20 out of the 20 biggest organizations in the US and in the world are going to be technology organizations. That is the profound impact that technology is having on our lives. And this slide is a really good example for that. But I can talk about technology all I want. And technology is important, but there are more important things in life. And one of them is climate change. I remember 3 months ago, I saw some cars floating through Seoul. So there we are talking about floods. And this is not only happening in Seoul, and in my home country, the Netherlands, and the countries around it, Netherlands and Belgium. Only this year there were severe floods. Floods that we had not seen before. And then I'm talking about the extreme heat and the sea levels rising. Climate change is the single most important thing and the single most impelling challenge that we have to care about. Now then the question of course is, why are you talking about that? Because we want to talk about technology, we want to talk about digital cities, we want to talk about smart cities. Why are you talking about climate change? Well, the thing is this. Climate change starts in cities. If we realize that 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions are created in cities, and that by far the largest populations in the world are living in cities, we understand that the problem of climate change has to start to be solved in cities. And the good thing is, the cities are going to be the biggest impacted by climate change. So there is every incentive that we are seeing in the society that with all the innovation knowledge we have in cities, that this is starting to happen. Mind you, that 90% of the world's people that are living in the cities are in danger if we don't do anything about the climate change, in danger of flooding. And we see that all over the world. So the good thing is that so many cities are already starting to work about it. But here is the notion. If we only keep talking about technology without understanding that we need to adopt a holistic approach, we are in big trouble. We cannot only address this through technology. Technology is going to play a role, but we have to make sure that the discussions we are having at this conference are not purely on technology. We have to think about what does it mean for the social fabric of cities? What does this mean for the economic resilience? In our discussions with the policymakers, we need to take a very holistic approach. And yes, the good thing then is, from an organizational perspective, in all those different areas, we can use technology. Now, the print may be a little fine here, but what we are saying here is that if we are looking at inclusiveness, DELL Technologies is working with partners in India on ID systems. And with those ID systems, making that available to many women in Indian society, we are improving the healthcare situation. We are looking at resilience projects in Houston, very important given all the tornadoes that are hitting the US right now. How can we predict that better using cloud type of solutions, predictive analytical models? Using technologies deployed the right way, we can really strengthen the core of cities. And that's what we have to do. We have to be holistic in our approach to drive sustainability. Well, why do we care from a DELL perspective? Well, here is the thing. It's so much in the DELL DNA, top down, starting by Michael Dell, that we want to make sure that we are creating technology, but just not creating technology for the sake of creating technology. We want to create technology to drive human progress. And that means that having an agenda into DELL that is looking at the environment, that is looking at the social impact of what we are doing, is of the utmost importance. So in DELL we have been setting goals, and not random goals. We want to make sure that the goals that we are setting are in line with the Paris climate agreements. We want to make sure that the deliverables are measurable. And this is something that everyone in DELL, at every level in the organization is driving. And what you see here, and not many people, or not everyone will know what I'm talking about when I talk about Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3. So Scope 1 is really about what Dell can do in our direct influence. But we want to make sure that we are also doing our part when it comes to Scope 2 and 3, where we are looking at our supply chain, making sure that our suppliers and all the components of what makes up DELL Technologies, that we drive the improvement there. So this for us is bigger than only looking at our own organization. And we want to make sure that when we are at conferences like this, we drive that notion. Technology is important, but let's also be very mindful that climate change is a big thing and that we can use technology to find solutions there. Now, talking about technology, let me talk a little bit more about that. So, what are we working on in Dell? And how are we looking at the future? Well, here you see the key strategic growth areas. We will start with 5G. A lot of investment right now is going into research and development around 5G and working on use cases there. Why is that? Well, we see 5G as the rocket, as the fuel of the rocket. 5G is driving our future. What 5G is also doing is creating a lot of opportunities at the edge. Well, let me give you an interesting statistic. Right now, 10% of all the data in the world is generated outside the main data centers. By 2025, and that's not so far away, 75% of the data will be generated outside the big data centers. It will be generated outside the core. It will be at the edge. So we believe that the edge is going to explode. And that means that if the edge is going to explode and we are going to have more real-time decision-making closer to the consumers of our solutions, we need to start talking about multi-cloud. The debate about public cloud or cloud on-prem is over. It's clear right now that multi-cloud by design, not by default. And what I mean there is that as organizations, we need to be very intentional about designing a multi-cloud future, because data is so important. And in this conference, we will be talking more about data. All those new edge solutions will generate that much more data. And when all that data is being generated, we need to consider how to capture that data. If the data is siloed, all in the edge, what do we do? So that means that when we are designing our plans, our cloud structures, and talk about multi-cloud, intentionally we need to design those multi-clouds to collect all the data. But collecting data is only one thing. We need to start analyzing the data, using the data to make better decisions, and then build a continuous flow where we collect, improve, collect, improve to drive advancements. And AI is going to be important there. So what we are going to see is that AI is going to be used to process data between the different clouds in a seamless way. And then lastly, protection here. We have to make sure that the data is going to be protected. So if you stitch that all together, from 5G to security, that explains why DELL Technologies is investing in those areas. And quite some money is invested in R&D, right? Right now, Dell is a $100 billion company, and that means that a big part of our revenue and our profits are being put back into the research in those areas. And then what we are seeing is that across many, many verticals, the use cases in those strategic investment areas are exploding. In a big way, in the slide here, you're seeing safety and security and all the individual use cases. But the things that we are seeing in safety and security are also happening in defense. Now, what my team is doing is recognizing that in many of the use cases in the edge, we need to make adjustments to the solutions. Sometimes we can use standard IT infrastructure, but since a lot of the innovation is happening at the edge, we need to start working on ruggedized solutions. Servers that can withstand outdoor type of environment. So in DELL Technologies, we have a big program that we are customizing solutions to make sure that when INNODEP is innovating and they come to us and they say, hey, it's great what you're having there, but we have better ideas, we have other ideas. We want to work with you to adjust, to make sure it fits what we want to deliver to the market. We have teams in DELL then to work with our customers like INNODEP to make those adjustments. And I can say the INNODEP leadership team is often coming to us because they are really at the forefront of technology and they are pushing the envelope with the capabilities that we have. And that is where we see the partnership grow from strength to strength. Now, one of the growing areas where we've had a lot of discussion with INNODEP is around Apex. Because developing the infrastructure solution is one thing. The other thing that we see happening in the market is that the delivery models are changing as well. Everything is becoming as a service. And what DELL Technologies is bringing to the market is no exception here. So what we are doing with Project Apex is that we are taking the easiness, the simplicity of the public cloud into the on-prem solutions, into the edge type of solutions. So by doing that, what you then can do, if you talk about a multi-cloud picture, you can have clouds in all type of locations, managed in a consistent way with the same ease as you would be managing a public cloud. The reason why this is important is that explosion at the edge. We need to make sure that decisions are being brought closer to the endpoint in a seamless way, but with the ease as a service model. And that is what we are working on together with INNODEP. And as you can see, when we talk about the deployed micro data center, combined with the next generation AI appliances that we are developing, you can really say that DELL Technologies and INNODEP are at the forefront of technology when we are bringing new capabilities like this to the market. And while we are doing that, we are ensuring it stays in line with the Korea government regulations and plans around the Smart City Data Hub. And Grant and his leadership team will be talking a lot more about that at the conference. DELL and INNODEP driving innovation, making sure it fits the plans, what the Korea regulators are doing. Now, I talked about technology a bit, but I also want to talk about people. That's the other part of the equation. So when we talk about the human engine of human innovation and technology that is driving progress, we decided to do a survey. We did a survey earlier this year. 10,500 people were interviewed by DELL Technologies. And we talked about innovation, we talked about the future. And I want to share a few statistics here. What we are seeing is that 73% of the IT professionals, people like you and me, working professionals that were interviewed, they were saying that 73 were saying that their organization lacks the structure to deal efficiently with innovation. So organizational structures were too centralized. People felt that organizations were not listening. Let me give you a few more numbers. We all started to work in a hybrid environment. Well, 58% of the people we interviewed are saying, it doesn't really help to improve their work-life balance. And the concern there is, if 58% of people are not happy with their work-life balance, how are you going to drive improvements? How are you going to innovate with relatively unhappy people? We also see that 26% of the people that we are interviewing are saying that their work is stimulating that they are intellectually stimulated by their work, that they are happy about their job, how it's helping them to develop. Only 26% of the people we interviewed were making that statement. So that means that quite so many people are kind of finding their job a little boring. And the last statistics that blew me away, and as a leader of a team, I really had to read that a few times and think about myself and think about my team. 93% of the people we interviewed, out of that 10,500 people, so the sample size is pretty big, 93% of the people were saying that their leadership team did not listen when they had new ideas, that their leadership teams were not open to hear different opinions. Well, we saw Steve Jobs here, right? And we saw Grant on stage. I mean, they were kind of mavericks. They are the people that have ideas that are new. What if they don't find people listening to them? How can we innovate? So I want to leave you with 3 comments around this. So when we talk about connectivity and the hybrid work environment, the things that we took as DELL Technology as an advice and that we are implementing in our own organization is the notion that work is an outcome. And what I mean there is work is not a place, work is an outcome. We really need to embrace the notion of hybrid work and give our teams the technology to really do that in a way that improves their work-life balance. Otherwise, we are going to see, especially with a younger generation coming up, a hard time in finding top talent in our organization. Work is an outcome, and as a top management, we need to support that. Then talking about productivity, if 26% of the people are feeling that their work is repetitive, or 26% of the people are actually thinking that their work is stimulating, and the far majority of the employees are feeling that their work is kind of boring, the question then that we should ask ourselves, how can we use technology to take over the repetitive tasks? How can we implement robot-like processes so that we are freeing up the time of our people to drive more innovation? So what we are trying to do here is that we are moving boldly to technology and making hard decisions to figure out what can be done by humans, what can be done by technology. And that will ultimately drive the productivity. And then lastly, empathy. We need to start listening more and more to each other. We need to spend time with our teams, develop processes in our organization to bring up the innovation power that we have. The collective mind of everyone in this room, the collective mind of everyone in our organizations and your organization is so powerful. If we put our people first, if we put our people at the forefront, and we do that in a very thoughtful way, then we can really build a true human-machine partnership. And that is the way forward as we are working to release the innovator in each and every one in our organizations. Grant, INNODEP Leadership, I really want to thank you for hosting us today. Indeed, a very emotional moment to see this room so full of people and being able to be here in a physical way. I wish you a fantastic conference. Thank you so much for your time.